Stop straining your hands and start getting your clients underfoot. At the Center for Barefoot Massage, we teach you to use gravity and physics to deliver effortless, deep myofascial work. Through our Fasci-Ashi approach of myofascial ashiatsu, barefoot mat work, and stretch therapy, you'll learn evidence-based techniques to resolve persistent pain. Worried about your size difference in relation to clients? Our innovative Ashi strap supports therapists of all builds to vary pressure with precision. The future of massage is afoot. Discover our upcoming CE classes at centerforbarefootmassage.com. Are you a manual therapist ready to expand your clinical reach and deepen your effectiveness? Upledger Craniosacral Therapy addresses deep restrictions, supports neurological and fascial systems, and enhances whole body function by working with the body's natural healing processes. For over 40 years, Upledger Institute International has led the field of craniosacral therapy, offering an approach that integrates seamlessly into any manual therapy practice and supports common to complex and chronic conditions. Find a class near you at upledger.com/courses or call 800-233-5880 extension 2 and begin your craniosacral therapy training for as little as $100 a month.
I'm Doug Nelson, and you're listening to the ABMP Podcast, a podcast that speaks to the massage and bodywork community. At one of my trainings, I was encouraging therapists to front-load the frequency of sessions for this particular condition we were looking at. A few weeks later, one of the therapists told me that, people just don't want to come for frequent treatments like that. And in the course of the conversation, I discovered that she only does 90-minute sessions. Even at just 3 sessions over a 2-week period, the cost, in terms of time and expense, aren't insignificant, especially in this case because I find that 30 minutes is the optimal time for treatment for that particular condition. And then recently a client came to me for a short session. We had really good results. I documented what we did, and then she went home to have her regular therapist treat her, addressing those same areas. But she called me again, wanted me to see her, because she felt like the work the therapist did actually irritated the tissue instead of helping it, even though, quote, quote, she was treating the same areas. She might have been, but it turns out she spent way too much time on those areas. And in fact, treating it less time, far less, would have been optimal. And then there's this. Years ago, my wife and I walked into a restaurant, and as we were walking in, I happened to glance over and see a client I'd seen weeks earlier. He called me over to say hi, and in the course of the conversation, of course, I asked him how he was doing. And he responded that the work that I had done had helped him significantly for several days, but it didn't really last, and so he went to another healthcare provider. That provider saw him 3 times a week for 6 weeks, and after 18 sessions, he felt like his pain had improved a bit. I mean, not a lot, but it was definitely better. Man, I came back to the table in a far worse mood than when we walked into the restaurant. As I sat down, I was mumbling and grumbling to my wife about how frustrated I was. I mean, look at it. In one session, I had created significant improvement, and it didn't dawn on him to consider continuing with the work we were doing. I mean, and I told my wife, really, I think that in 3-4 sessions tops, we could have made a significant difference in his pain. And you know how spouses can do this? They just cut right to the chase of your stuff. She just looked at me and asked that little question, "Did you ask him to do that?" Checkmate. I remember I just looked at her and said, "Just give me the menu." So as it turns out, it's not only what is done, it's how long it's done and how often it's done that might be the biggest difference between success and failure. And that's the subject of this podcast, dosage and frequency. Think about it in relationship to your history of massage education. In school, and most often in continuing education, the focus is on technique. hey, here's a really cool way to address fill in the blank. Well, that's great, but for how long and how often should you do this? Imagine, in the case that somebody shows you a really cool stretching technique for, your upper trapezius. After you understand how to do it, the logical next question is, hey, how long should I hold it? And how often should I do this? Yet in our field, those questions seldom get addressed. But we could take a lesson from physical therapy, rehabilitation science, nutrition, exercise science. All of these fields have spent a lot of time exploring and researching frequency and dosage. In fact, just as I left the clinic and as I walked out, I heard two of the physical therapists that I share the space with just exploring and kind of debating back and forth the intricacies of just that, frequency and dosage, with regard to a specific condition that they were helping patients with. When you think about dosage, man, there's just so many parallels. If you think about nutrition, pharmacology, there are so many resources poured into finding the right amount of whatever vitamin or medication, whatever it is that creates the desired effect. People in nutrition don't say, eat some protein and do it whenever you feel like you need it. That's not what they do. They give you guidelines. Here's how many grams you need over such and such a time period. And if you're having surgery, we want you to do that. You're like, wow. And if you're taking a medication, seldom do they say, just take it whenever you feel like it and take how much of it you feel like you want to. That's really a recipe for disaster. And in exercise science, the literature is vast, comparing different dosages. I've heard my personal trainers endlessly explore these ideas of how many repetitions will build the kinds of outcomes that you're looking for. And the goal just isn't efficiency, it's effectiveness. Even in disciplines like music, I've seen so many studies on what are the optimal durations of practice sessions. You hear stories about people spending long hours with their instruments. And while those stories are attention-getting, musicians today are getting smarter about how to focus their efforts for maximum improvement and, importantly, prevention of injury. If all this is true in so many other fields, how could it not be true for our own? When I'm presenting in a conference or our seminars, I'll ask people just playfully, hey, do you know why most sessions in massage are an hour? And there's this quiet and people look at each other and they kind of shrug their shoulders. They look to me for an answer. And my answer is, I don't know either. I assume it started because it's convenient for scheduling. But I would challenge you to consider this. Are we more interested in convenience or are we interested in outcomes? Now let's take a look at frequency. It's just as important as dosage. Turns out timing matters. It's not just what is done, but how often it's done. If you use the nutrition example, hopefully nobody said, hey, you know what? I ate a salad once and I didn't lose any weight at all. I mean, how ridiculous. But in some ways, we kind of do that with massage, which is why, in my clinic, we don't offer any kind of introductory discount. For several conditions, we actually tell people up front, you really need to plan on doing a ballpark of 3, 4, 5 sessions to see real and lasting results. And we discourage the attitude, I'm going to try this once to see if it helps my back pain, plantar pain, whatever problem they present with. Because the problem with the let me try this just once attitude is you're really looking for a miracle, and it really sets up unrealistic expectations about outcomes. It kind of sets the client up for failure, and I would say the therapist for failure too. And then those people are the people who say, I tried massage and it didn't really help. Well, that's like saying, I exercised once and it didn't help. Consistency, frequency matters. In that same vein as the who decided it was an hour, who decided that biweekly appointments are really the ideal timing? To address that, let me give you a recent example. This was just a couple weeks ago of a client that was referred to me by her physician at the emergency department. So she presented with pain in her back that kind of went around to the front and was correlated with breathing. Of course, since it was on the left side, that sets alarm bells all over the place. And then after having multiple tests, they determined that her heart's fine. This is actually musculoskeletal. And now she's told, okay, you're fine. Well, it depends how you define fine, because it still hurts to breathe and it still hurts to move, but it's musculoskeletal, right? And it's probably going to take about 6 weeks to resolve. They also tell her that when she's still like, isn't there anything I can do? The physician recommended potentially coming to my office. So that's what happened. So I have seen this condition many times, and here's what works. I saw her every day for about 20 minutes. Hers was one of the more stubborn cases. I saw her 5 days in a row. But here's the deal. After her 5th session, the pain was completely resolved. Think about that. She was told it would take 6 weeks, and this was resolved in 6 days. If I had changed that to see her for longer sessions once a week, I would estimate, and in the beginning, this is what I did, it took about 4 weeks. Okay, 4 is better than 6, but I like 6 days better than 4 weeks, and certainly better than 6 weeks. I mean, why would you leave somebody in pain that long if daily 20-minute sessions would make a difference? It's really interesting. When I've talked about something like this in presenting at a conference or a training, I just look around and I see the faces of therapists just looking really uncomfortable. I get the sense that they think the massage police are going to come around and arrest either them or me at any moment. It's like, I just don't know as a profession how we got so fixed in certain conventions. But here's a couple ideas. In the history of massage, it's mostly been seen as a service. And in services, the decisions to return are most often driven by things like client preference, client finances, or honestly, the therapist's schedule. In the service world, the clients decide when and how often services should happen. But if you look at a different world, a physical therapist or a dentist doesn't say, hey, just come back whenever you feel like it. They give you guidelines because there are certain reasons that you're seeing them. And to get those specific outcomes, there are generally specific courses of action that create them. Now, I need to address this before we go any farther. Let me remind you that my practice is very outcome-driven. Clients aren't coming to me for general stress reduction or non-specific maintenance. So this dosage and frequency discussion is really vital to helping clients achieve very specific outcomes. If your practice is mostly stress reduction, and God knows the world could use more of that right now, these concepts might be less valuable. When I used to do that kind of work, I encouraged people to get to know their bodies more deeply. And through that deeper sense of self, that introspection, hopefully they would know when to use my services more. But the world I'm in now is very, very different than that. And actually, in a way, I think that's one of the aspects of this problem. Quite often, and as I did years ago, I transitioned slowly to more outcome-based work, but I kept the same frameworks that were appropriate for general relaxation when I made that change. It took me a long time to question the structure of what I was doing, probably longer than I'm willing to admit. Honestly, but driven by the desire to get results, I somehow developed the courage to just keep altering the framework, not just the technique, but not just what was done, but how long it was done and how often it was done. And really, my discussion of this topic now hopefully will just inspire you to question your own approach. I'm not going to give you, here's what you should do, but I just don't see this talked about very often in our own field. And I think I have a fairly good grasp of the massage research literature, but there seems to be an enormous gap that could potentially help so many therapists. There are a few studies that are published, but we need more than a few. We need scores of them examining different approaches and the dosage and frequency of those approaches as well. And because of this gap, I have to say, it's pretty disconcerting when I hear people saying like, well, it doesn't seem like massage is very helpful for fill in the blank. Really? I have to think there are 3 aspects that seem pretty critical to this whole discussion. Number 1, what was done? Is that clearly articulated? 2, for how long was it done? And 3, what was the frequency of treatment? I mean, would you really say that physical therapy doesn't help fill in the blank if they did it once a week for 7 weeks, like, I don't know, 7 treatments a week apart? Probably not. Then you cannot say, well, it doesn't look like physical therapy helps. So to explore these concepts in your own practice, here's some ideas. Maybe first, what kind of assessment and reassessment strategies do you use now? It's not just how does it feel now at the end of the session? Are there things that you can measure? Are there things that you can track to know that progress is being attained? And I understand this is a leap for many therapists. It certainly was for me. But there are multiple options for you to choose from, and that's really probably a topic for another time. But here's the thing. The more precise the topic, the more focused the approach. And I might add, the more focused, the less energy used. And in that end, what is the goal that the client's after? Mostly, it's resumption of some activity. I love that saying of, it's not what's the matter with you, it's what matters to you. One way that I often ask that to clients is, a few sessions down the road, how will you really know you're better? And no client has ever said, I want to move 2 points lower on the pain rating scale. It's usually, I want to be able to do this. The person I saw this morning, I want to be able to run for at least 20 minutes. If I could do 20 minutes running, followed by 20 minutes of walking, 20 minutes alternating that, I'd be happy. I'd feel like this is what I'm hoping for. That's our goal and nothing less. Next point, examine your reasoning behind the session lengths you are using. Just have a clear why behind your what. If you're doing a longer session and you have clear reasons exactly why that works and you've explored other options, all good. Just have a clear why behind what you're doing. And remember that our goal is always to keep the client's welfare front and center. If you remember that opening story, I was too afraid to ask that guy to come back. As a result, he spent lots of time and lots of money on another approach that I believe got him far less results than I could have achieved. I think I was just too fearful of coming across as like salesy, right? Trying to sell myself. But it was my uncomfortableness. And that uncomfortableness was not in his interest at all. In fact, far from it. In a weird way, I know this sounds crazy, but it was actually really selfish. If I had thought of him more and my discomfort less, I might have made that offer to him and he would have benefited greatly. Next point, for really specific outcomes, consider the loading phase concept, which is really kind of borrowed from rehab and strength training. The idea that the initial therapeutic change requires a denser schedules up front-loaded, after which you kind of step down in frequency. This is something that you can explain to clients, and when I've done that, people just nod their heads like, yeah, that makes perfect sense because it kind of works in everything else you do, right? And lastly, I know this territory can feel really, really scary. I wish I could give you very clear guidelines, but it really depends on the condition that you're addressing and the exact approach you use to that condition. If I'm mentoring therapists in my own clinic, honestly, we're all using the same approach, Precision Neuromuscular Therapy, so there's uniformity in that way. And I have the benefit, honestly, of more than 4 decades of treatment experience. And many of my therapists, they've been with me for more than 20 years. So we have that history to draw on that younger therapists don't often have. But my wish for you is just to summon the courage to explore these ideas, track the results of them, track the results in your practice. I think you'll find the process really enlightening. And even if you make very few changes, your confidence in the why behind that structure is something that your clients will truly sense. I hope you find this valuable. I'm headed back to the clinic, and I'll see you at the next stop on the learning journey.
Precision Neuromuscular Therapy has been teaching high-quality seminars for over 20 years across the country. Founded by Doug Nelson, PNMT uses problem-solving skills and precise treatment options to get powerful results for your clients. PNMT seminars focus on honing your assessment and palpation skills to precisely target the source of your client's pain while understanding the why behind the what. Meet us in a hands-on seminar or online in the PNMT portal and let us join you on your learning journey. Learn more at pnmt.org. Elevate your bodywork career with Anatomy Train's Structural Integration Certification, ATSI. Discover how to map the pattern and shape the change through inspiring lectures, hands-on body reading, and practical techniques you can use in your practice right away. Join us for ATSI Maine 2026 to 2027, where Tom Myers will personally kick off this transformative professional training. Learn more at anatomytrains.com/ATSI.